Max, thanks for sitting down with me.
Thank you, Jay.
So I don't know if you remember this, but we actually met in a bar in San Francisco. It was like a little over a year ago. And I remember it because I had just learned that you had just done something that most entrepreneurs in the mining sector will never do. And that was get a check out of Marin Katusa. So I want you to walk me through that a little bit. Like, how did that occur? How'd you meet Marin? How'd you earn his trust? And how'd you eventually get money out of this guy?
Summer 2018, I thought it would be a good idea to start a gold company. Gold was doing terrible. I think it was about $11.88.
Right.
I got together with Brad Telfer, which is Ian Telfer's son, and we decided to create Barrian Mining. At the time, we didn't really have an asset or what we wanted to do. We just kind of thought, we're going to start a gold company, and then we're going to figure it out and find the assets. So we found some. Through my uncle, I met Marin Katusa, and I went to see Marin and said, this is an idea I have. Here's the asset that I like. It's in another company. Would you consider participating in the seed round? Mm-hmm. And he said, no, but if you're able to get this other asset in that company, then I'll write you a check.
Got it.
So I was able to negotiate terms for a project called Bolo. And Bolo was a project that many people have sought to get over the last decade,
right,
unsuccessfully. And Brad and I were able to get a deal done on this property, go back to Marin, and Marin wrote me a check.
Yeah, now how'd you do that deal? Because that had to have been a pretty competitive property to secure.
Through some friendships that we had, but just sitting down with the owner of the property, it was a tough time last summer. Markets weren't doing very good for gold. He had a number of other assets in the company, higher overhead, and we had some mutual shareholders, and we were able to get a deal done based on the fact that, that project wasn't their focus. Okay. But what Barrian could do is that could make it our focus and then bring them value, because we would go and do an exploration program on it, which is something that they didn't have the funding to have at the time. Well, another one of my directors, Jordan Trimble, actually tried to get this asset in 2012, I think with Marin. And they were, the gold price was 1700 still, and I think it was just too tough of a deal. The owner wanted too much cash, and after going back and forth for a while, they just didn't get a deal done. So it's kind of been something that he's been for years.
He had his eye on it in the past.
It's been something a number of big guys have had their eyes on.
Yeah.
This property was drilled in 2013 and again in 2017. But in 2013, they drilled 133 meters of 1.3 grams from surface oxides. Within that, 30.5 meters of about 3.3. In terms of oxides, that is very good grade. It's Carlin type mineralization. It's not on the Carlin trend.
Can you talk about what that means? What is Carlin type?
Essentially, Carlin is just mineralization from surface. So if you look at the Carlin trend, you see a lot of this rocks that have been uncovered. And generally, the oxides are heap leachable, less expensive to produce gold from these areas. So Bolo has those characteristics, but there's a lot of cover too. So when those holes were drilled, they were drilled based off mineralization at surface. There was no geophysics done, and they were some successful holes. So what we did is we then shot geophysics on the property to kind of uncover what was underneath all that ground, and they were actually quite successful. So what we did is then base a 10 drill hole program off those geophysics. We drilled around the known mineralization. None of the holes were twinning. They're all step-out holes. We went a lot deeper. The deepest hole from the last program was about 133 meters. The rest were only about 60 meters. So we did 2 deep holes about 230 and the rest about 150 to 180.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is substantially show that the mineralization continues at depth and is open. We had a very good drill team with us. Apex Geosciences based in Vancouver was down there with me. We had a very good operator of the drill rig. So everything went as smoothly as we could have imagined, and we just hope that those results will be as phenomenal as we expect and think they will be.
Now, I had a look at the share structure. It's pretty tight. Can you talk about who owns the company?
Yeah. So we did a straight IPO, 20 cents, no warrants. Previously, there was a 5-cent round in the summer before. There's 43 million shares out, fully diluted. That includes shares that we issued to the vendor for Bolo. My family and myself own about 9 million shares. I'm the largest shareholder, about 3 million shares. I've bought about 600,000 shares in the market myself since we came trading, and I continue to buy stock. So it's something that I fully put my efforts behind. All my money that I earn as a salary goes towards buying stock, in fact more, and I will continue to do so. I feel having skin in the game is the most important thing. I came from investing, and I came from running a small little family fund. And what I found is a lot of these people that run companies, they take a salary and they don't own any stock. So if the stock's having a bad day or a bad week or a bad year, it doesn't affect them. It affects me. And so it's something that, this is, I think, being young and having a passion for this kind of thing, it makes me a good CEO, because a lot of people want to know, how much does he have in the game before I make an investment? Why would someone buy a stock when the guy running the company owns no shares?
100%. Yeah, and I know most of the top financiers in the business, be that Marin or Rick, they're not even going to touch a deal if the owners aren't the controlling shareholders or the majority shareholders. Right. Now, your team's pretty unique. And Max, like, I can probably say I've seen over 2,000 junior mining pitches, and I can say that honestly. And according to the CEOs of these companies, the commonality between all of them is that they have world-class management teams. In fact, I'd caution every mining CEO to never use that statement again because of how watered down it is. But you're a bit of a unique case, right? If you look at who's, your left and right hand at Barrian, it's like the next generation of killers in this industry. So how did you guys all come together, and what's the relationship like? And run my audience through who these people are.
So Barrian essentially is myself and Brad Telfer. That's where we got the name Barrian from my dad Barry and his dad Ian. And when we were creating this company, I wanted to get some people with more board experience. I built a few shelves in the past and was CEO of Defense Metals prior to this. I worked for Advantage Lithium, which had a tremendous success despite the lithium space coming off. But I wanted someone that really has been in the business for a while at that level and run a company. Well, I think me and Brad get along very well like this because, we speak 5-10 times a day. We both have that same vision. Jordan is there to give good advice. He's had a lot more experience running companies than I have. So if I'm kind of stuck in a situation, say, what do you think I should do? Do these people, would they benefit the company? Should we hire this person to do that? He's great for that. Jordan is extremely hardworking. I think he sold his first company to New Gold in 2010, so he would have been 21. And just so working with Jordan over the years, I figured, why don't we try and get a few young, passionate people together that, want to see something go and work hard. We then found Chris Raffle at Apex Geosciences. He's about 42. Apex does a lot of work for Gold Standard Ventures. Benchmark Metals has done work for Fiore. So very experienced in Nevada in the Golden Triangle and very successful. We then brought on Jim Gregg, who's been tremendous with acquiring some of these properties with us. Jim runs Benchmark Metals. If you look at their stock, they just got Eric Sprott in for $4 million. So he's been a big help for me personally and just kind of guiding me on what to do. And then Toby Pierce, who's a banker out of London, worked for GMP in London. And through his connections, we've met some big bankers in the mining space. So, it's kind of putting together a good team. Everyone was friendly and got along and said, hey, why don't we do something cool in the gold sector? I think the gold space is coming back. Let's give it all our efforts and see what we can come up with. And that's how we came up with Barrian, essentially.
Right. And so a few names you mentioned, yourself, Brad Telfer, Jordan Trimble, you're all second generation in this industry.
Yes.
What kind of, does that give you an advantage, or how does that impact how you think about your approach in the sector?
One, I think we all have successful role models in our parents, people that have done tremendously well in the space. Brad having his dad to look up to and ask for advice. I don't think you can get better advice from someone in the gold sector than Ian Telfer. When I said to him, can you ask your dad what you think about these assets, right? And so when you get the opinions, it's always good. And my dad was one of the founders at Q-Trade Securities, a very successful investor and developer. And just learning the day-to-day things of how hard these people work as first generations. It's amazing the amount of hours they put in. Just to see someone in their 70s still working 50 hours a week because they love doing it. So you get that kind of drive. And Jordan's dad being a big broker at Canaccord before. And so, it's just how can the next generation, with the opportunity we have, go out, find some good assets, get the advice from our parents. Hey, what do you think of this? Because they've made a lot of mistakes and they've had a lot of wins.
Yeah.
And being able to take that knowledge and be like, okay, we're going to find these great assets. We're going to work hard, raise some money, and we're going to be successful. And it's not maybe we'll be successful, it's we are going to be successful, and whether we have to work harder and harder to do that, we will be successful.
Yeah, right. And it's that last part that resonates with me. As you know, I'm also second generation in the capital markets. And that did help open some doors for me. Like when I was just getting my career rolling, it's the connections and the intros that really help. But later on, like years later, I found the biggest impact has been almost, it's like the chip on my shoulder, right? Because I refuse to live in someone else's shadow. And so every morning when I wake up, it's like it doesn't matter what I did yesterday. I've got to swing harder today because I want to 10x whatever was done before me.
Yeah.
Does that drive you? Do you feel that pressure internally?
Yeah, you know, my dad was extremely successful. He was a broke, poor farmer, moved to Vancouver, and did everything on his own. And so when I had this opportunity to get a good education and to work hard and show him that I could do this, I take every opportunity to try and take what I got as an advantage and to use it to benefit myself and everyone else. I'm in the office Saturday and Sunday mornings. I'm up every day, probably about 4:35 a.m. And all I do is think about Barry, and my whole focus right now in life is to see this company succeed, and we are so close to seeing things succeed. I even forget my girlfriend's birthday because I'm thinking about Barry, and she doesn't like that, but the fact is, that's all my goal is right now, is to see this company succeed and bring value to our shareholders.
Right, okay, and so when you talk about the next big mining company, the exploration story is exciting, and Vancouver loves an exploration story. But what's next for you guys? Are you looking at acquisitions, or what's in the future?
So we just acquired another property in Nevada called Troy. We have about 1,218 acres now. It's about 20-minute drive from our flagship Bolo asset in Nevada. It is Carlin type, again, not in the Carlin trend. So, we're always looking at, despite having these fantastic assets, is there something else that we should be looking at? I think we should always be looking at acquiring other things. And so, we get the ability to see some very good assets through our network of people. And so we're always looking. But the focus right now is the drill results from Bolo. With some success at Bolo, we'd like to do some geophysics on Troy, which is in the area, and see if we can have a new area play, essentially.
Now, how much attention do you pay on a daily basis to the gold price, Max?
You know what? I am watching that left, right, and center. I probably watch it more than I should. I understand now how it kind of trades. At $1,500 gold, companies actually do tremendous. They did very well at $1,300 gold and $1,400 gold. But what I think really is going to get investors excited is that big run from now until 1,800. As an investor myself, is sexy as balance sheets are for gold companies. The retail investors want to see those big spikes. And so that's what I think a lot of people are waiting for, is to see that next big run. In the summer, when you saw gold go from $1,350 to $1,450, you saw the junior gold stocks almost double, a number of them, because of that excitement. And all of a sudden, where did this come from? And then everyone got, okay, $1,450 is nice, we want to see $1,500. And then everyone gets greedy and wants to see $1,550. And now it's back down, everyone's kind of, there's so many headlines and articles every day that it's so hard to, you digest one and the next thing hits you.
Right.
And so I think for me, I'd love to see the next big jump in the gold space. And I think when that happens, people will then start really looking at the juniors and saying, I think it's time to start buying some of these things.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I'm definitely making a bet on that. I think the timing's really good. And as we were talking about before this interview, this is the first time since probably 2011, like maybe 2012, that gold has been the good narrative to market my conferences, right? Whether that's in San Francisco or Vancouver. Were you waiting for the 2018, the property you acquired? I think your timing was great, but were you considering that in 2016, 2017? Did timing just look better in 2018? Why did you pull the trigger when you did?
I just felt that after years of seeing, if you saw the exodus of money flowing out of the gold sector from 2012, whether it's next week or in 6 months or 6 months ago, I didn't know when the timing was going to be that gold would come back, but I knew that something was going to happen within the next 6 months to 2 years, and it did. When we signed Bolo, gold bottomed out at 1188. When we went public, gold was 1,300, and now gold's 1,500, and we just finished our drill program. So, I think timing is almost everything, because you got to have great timing. I think anyone now thinking, I'm going to go out and incorporate a company and take something public, which is going to take 6 months. I think you're too late. And I think that's a good thing that me and Brad did, was we timed it right. We got a great team. TD and Goldman Sachs were both calling gold for $1,650 in the next short term. if you see that and we come out with some screaming drill results, I think we're going to have a lot of success.
Now, you're a young CEO, you're a young driven CEO, or at least I think we're around the same age. So I've, generally speaking, for most of my career, been the youngest guy in the room, right? And I hope that's still the case, I don't know. But do you still find that? Are you still the youngest guy at the table when you're doing deals?
You know, I was at the Metals Investor Forum and I felt like I was a baby. I think the average age had to be 60 plus, the people there. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, the problem with that is, you know, all these investors are in mining are an older generation. I think there's got to be the shift where people that have done well in the pot space and other sectors will say, you know what, I'm in my mid-30s, I'm doing fairly well. I think the economy is going down a bit. I think I should buy a junior. Where else am I going to put my money?
Now, is being one of the youngest CEOs in the game an advantage or a disadvantage?
I think it's an advantage because I'm going to have a long career to continue doing what I'm doing. I plan on building Barrian into a success. And I also think you get great advice from the older generation. So me being 32, I have 30 more years to go out and do this.
When I see a younger face in the mining sector, and people like Jordan Trimble, who I've invested with, and yeah, he sold his first company in his early 20s. There's something to that, right? And I think people pay attention. Now, you could have taken your drive and your entrepreneurial spirit and charged into any industry, and you chose one of the toughest and most volatile on the planet. Why did you do that?
So when I started 10 years ago, I was going to university. I was doing mobile auto detailing, and I would go to all my uncle's successful brokers' friends, and I'd wax their Lamborghinis and their Ferraris and their Bentleys and their McLarens, and they would all give me stock tips. And you know, some were in the gold space, some were in oil and gas, other sectors. But I remember I bought Ventana Resources at $1.50, and at the time, the guy that told me to buy it said, "Well, you know, it was a quarter. It's $1.50. I think it's had a good run. I've already sold a bit." And it got taken out by Ike Batista for $12 not long later. And I saw other stocks like International Tower Hill go from $1 to 10, and Attack Resources $1 to 10. It's just like, you know, when retail gets behind these things and they go, man, they go hard. So I thought, you know, this is something that I you know, was so excited about as an investor. So with Barrian, I think we have a window to create a lot of success. We have some good assets. If we can prove up some good results, continue doing what we're doing. Gold was the first big win I had when I got into the investment space. And I think it's going to be the next big one I have. If someone wants to go into buying a junior miner, I mean, you got to understand, I think it's always a bit of a risk, but if you have a bit of capital to put towards that risk, you can see a lot of tremendous success.
Awesome, Max. Thanks so much for chatting with me. Looking forward to having you in San Francisco.
Appreciate it. See you then.